Welcome back to the channel. My name is Matty. Today we're going to be talking about how to get brand deals in 2023. Now, for some context, my main channel, which is just MattyTingles, is almost to 600,000 subscribers. The majority of my brand deals have been on that channel, of course. But this is a topic that you guys have asked for, so we're going to get right into it. I've been a full-time YouTuber for almost 8 years now. I've done over 100 brand deals. I've brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue. So we're going to talk about this, okay? Strap in. We got a lot to go over, but I hope this is helpful for anybody out there. Regardless of your channel size, this is gonna be kind of a general thing and you can adjust it according to your following and your lifestyle. So let's get started. What is a brand deal? So a brand deal is typically a partnership between the creator and a brand. Typically, a brand will compensate you to feature their product or service in your content. So I think a lot of people ask, like, why would brands spend so much money on brand deals with creators? Well, I think it's pretty simple, right? We could spend money on a billboard somewhere, right? Where people drive through and maybe we get brand recognition, maybe we see something for a ton of money, or we can pay a creator with hundreds of thousands or millions or whatever followers who actually care about the things that they care about, right? Which in turn should turn into more conversions than, say, a billboard or a commercial. To me, it's just making their marketing more personal, and especially with how algorithms work now, you know, like you can like be thinking about something and an ad will come up on your phone, right? I know you've all gone through that. So they can see analytics of like, oh, this creator does this in this genre. Let's work with them because their viewers are typically shopping, blah, 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 blah. So before we get into how to actually get a brand deal, let's talk about how one actually works, right? So typically, now I should preface this with everyone's career is different, but I am going off the typical kind of standard brand deal for influencer marketing right now. Typically, once you've locked in a deal, and by that I mean you've negotiated, contract is signed, we're good to go. Typically, product will be sent to you, or the service, or whatever the company is, will be sent to you free of charge. For creators out there, I highly suggest getting a PO box wherever you're at, so you don't have to have product sent to your home. You don't want that stuff out in the internet. Next, a brand will normally send you a copy, and what a copy is basically a brand guideline of things to say if you want. If you want, it can even be a script. It'll be most of the time like a discount code, a link, just kind of the guidelines of things that they want you to cover and things that they don't want you to cover. So for me personally, what I do is I go through these guidelines and I make my own kind of outline, right? I just take certain things from it. So normally I'll take like 2 or 3 talking points, put it in a Word document, and then put my call to action, my CTA, which is call to action, which is like the thing at the end of the video where you're like, so if you're interested, go here and use code Matty for blah, blah, blah. That's the CTA. I make my own outline just to make it a little more cohesive, and I can kind of fit that around my content, which is what I love to do. So once you have approved, so once you're locked in, once the product has been sent to you, once you go through the copy, now you're gonna film your content, right? Now, that could be anything. That could be a video, that could be a TikTok, that could be an Instagram post, that could be really anything, depending on what you do on the internet, right? And usually, you'll send that content in for approval. So let's say you need to have it up by July 20th, right? You would typically want to film that thing, a week or 2 ahead of time so you can send it to the brand and get approval so you can post on that date. So once it's sent in, once they approve it, they'll say, hey, you're good to go. Here's your link, here's your code, all that good stuff. You post the content, normally with a tracking link, so they'll normally give you a custom URL. So the brand can see their own analytics and see how many clicks you're getting, how many conversions you're getting, that kind of thing, to see if it's worth their money to work with you. And then lastly, typically, once everything is up, good to go, you invoice the brand for payment. Now, I should preface this also that, depending on the size of your following, you could also just be doing this for product, right? You could just be like, hey, we'll send you a free, vacuum, put it in a video. There it is. As you get bigger, hopefully, cross my fingers for all of you, as you get bigger, you can start charging flat fees for this. So not only are you getting product, but you're typically going to be getting some sort of flat fee, and we'll get into that. So that's how a brand deal works. Now, let's talk about how to get a brand deal. So I'm gonna show you a few tips and tricks, just little things you can do to better your chances of landing a deal with a brand. So number one, make great content and grow your audience, right? They're gonna look at your numbers. They're gonna look at not just followers, they're gonna look at your engagement. That's the biggest thing, engagement and retention. I've seen people with 1 million followers somewhere, but their retention and engagement is really bad, right? And that kind of shows the brand. Yes, they have a lot of followers, but people don't really care about what they're saying or doing. So that would make them kind of a risk to work with, right? So make great content, grow your audience. That's number one, of course. Number two, before you get these brand deals, find products that you love, find brands that you love, post about them and tag them. Like, so I'm gonna use Instagram for an example. Every photo you take, if there's things in it that you love, tag that brand. Now, they may not see it, they may see it, but it's gonna show your loyalty, right? And especially if you land something and then they go into the DM and you're like, and they see like, oh, you tagged us 10 times, you already love this product, right? It's just little things, it's just little things like that that can give you an edge and get you seen by these brands. Number three, how to get a brand deal. Do your research. I think this is maybe the biggest one for me. And what I mean by that is find contacts, right? Find people who work at this company. Find creators who are already sponsored with that company. There's a rabbit hole that you can go down. So let's say there's a creator you watch that's sponsored by something and you're like, I really want to work with that brand. Go to their channel, right? See what they're doing with it. Find their manager, find what agency they're with, contact that manager or agency. All the info is there. So find contacts. I've actually had a pretty high rate of success. This sounds crazy with cold call emails. So actually, hold on. So I actually just signed a brand deal with Elgato, okay? Love Elgato. I was already using their products and I landed that brand deal by cold emailing. I just found a great contact there and emailed them. I sent them who I am, why they should work with me, what kind of content I can make, and we made it happen. But all that came from me doing research, right? So do your research, okay? Next, follow trends. That's a big one. See who's sponsored. See who's sponsored by what in the niche, in the category that you're creating in. That's huge. And this is just a mindset, but it's like, okay, if I'm looking for a brand that I want to work with and they're not sponsoring anyone, it's probably not going to happen, right? And also, if I look at like who is sponsoring LeBron James, probably not going to happen for me, right? We're not in the same lane. But if I look at the ASMR category, who's sponsoring ASMR artists or streamers or people into sneakers like I am, or, culture or music or, whatever, technology. Just kind of look at your lane and then find out who's sponsored in your lane. That's huge. Also, it helps if you can find creators in the same size as you, right? The same amount of followers, the same amount of engagement, views, and see who they're sponsored with, because it's likely that your chances of working with a creator who's similar to you, that's a higher success rate, I think. And lastly, and we're gonna get into this right now, you can also hire help. So should you work with help? And what I mean by that is either an agency or a manager, typically both, right? So an agency is usually a company who has standing relationships with brands and works with dozens or hundreds of creators. So they already have these relationships, right? So on one hand, it does make it a little easier, and I'll explain why. But that's what an agency is. Normally, it is kind of the middleman between you and the brand. So a few pros of working with an agency. Number one, like I said, they have those standing relationships, right? They're not cold calling emails. They have dozens of brands, hopefully, if it's a great agency, and every month they'll pitch you to these brands. So they already have the relationship, so you get to skip all those things that I just said, right? Number two, they'll communicate with that brand, like I said, middleman, and they'll negotiate for you. Now, negotiating is really interesting because I think it's really hard for most creators to know their own worth, right? Because I'm sure if you're a creator and you're still watching this, you've gotten to the point where you're like, okay, they're interested, they asked how much. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to lose them, but then I want to make as much money as I can. It's that weird balance, right? An agency will do that for you. They'll do all the negotiating for you. They'll run the contracts for you. They'll do all the paperwork. So really all you're doing is they'll email you and say, hey, this brand is interested. Here's how much. Here's what you would get. Here's when it's due. Are you interested? It does save you a lot of time. They'll also invoice the brand on your behalf and make sure you get paid. So they're doing the legwork for you. So that's very, very nice. So that's the pros. Cons of that, they take a cut out of your revenue, of course, right? I think Industry standard is between 10 and 30%. If you can get in with an agency that's 10%, that's fantastic. I personally have never seen anything under 10. I have seen it up to 30, which is pretty high. So, you know, that's easy math though, right? So let's say you're doing $1,000 brand deal. They're taking $100 to $300 of that. But it just kind of comes down to, is that worth it to you, right? All right, so something I really want to talk about, and this is for all you creators out there, regardless of your size, it's how much should you charge, right? Now, this is gonna be, it's kind of hard to talk about because everyone's in a different category. Everyone does different stuff. Everyone has different size views, followership, everything, right? So it is kind of hard. So I'm just gonna kind of speak in general terms here. So I think the most important part here when you're trying to figure out how much to charge is knowing your worth. Like I already talked about that a little bit. It's very hard to find that balance of you want to make as much as you can from a brand, but you don't want to ask too much to where they pass on it, right? That's a struggle that literally every creator I know has struggled with in the past. So I can only talk for me personally. Basically what I do right now is if a brand reaches out to me and they're like, we'd love to work with you, what is your rate right now? Depending on the brand, if I think that they would have a budget, if it's a bigger brand, hopefully, what I'll do is I'll add a couple grand onto my normal fee, right? So I'll go up a little bit. And normally what they'll do is they'll negotiate and say, hey, that's a little high, we can come down to this. And a lot of the times they'll come down right into my sweet spot of where I wanna be anyway. And so don't go too crazy, right? Because then they'll just pass and find someone else. But for me personally, I normally add a couple grand to the end of my flat rate that I'm going for right now. And normally they'll come back down and they'll feel like they're getting a deal, but it's also exactly where you wanna be. Does that make sense? So know your worth. That's number one. Number two, learn about CPM. Okay, so what CPM is it's for the advertiser, the cost per 1,000 views. Okay, so basically the brand looks at you and go, okay, let's say they're averaging 100,000 views. That's 100,000s, right? So how much are we gonna pay him per 1,000 views? That's typically how brands look at it. As far as CPM, it's gonna change for everybody again, but normally I see between $15 to $50 to $100, somewhere in that range, but try to go when you're first starting out, try to go for about $15. So that means if your videos are getting 100,000 views, that'd be $1,500 for your brand deals, right? Again, this changes all the time, but just learn about CPM because that is largely how brands look at paying you. The last thing about money is also just kind of learn the business about it, right? Like, if you're gonna do it without an agency, you need to learn how to invoice. You need to learn that most brands are net 30, which means if you finish a video and it goes up on July 1st, you're not gonna be paid until August 1st. So net 30 means they have 30 days to pay you after it goes live. That's typically the standard for the industry. Some are net 90, some are set 60. Like it can get crazy, but just learn the business. Again, all of this stuff is ready online for you to learn, especially here. Now, I'm not an expert on all of this stuff, but I have been doing it for a long time. And like I said, I've done over 100 brand deals. I brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars from them. So I do know a lot about this, but also I do think everyone is different, right? I know people with $100 CPMs. I know people with $6 CPMs. Like it changes. I'm just giving you, again, a general scale. So that's pretty much it. I mean, there's a lot more that you could go into, but typically I went into the main things. We went into what is a brand deal. We did how to get a brand deal. We did how does a brand deal typically work? Should you work with an agency? What should you charge? Those are kind of the main things you need to focus on. And I hope this is helpful. I hope it can be a resource for creators out there because, when I was first coming up, I wish I had something like this, right? Like, the influencer marketing thing has just completely blown up since I started. And if I would have had something like this, it would have been so helpful. So I do hope it's helpful for all back in. I do hope it's helpful for all of you out there. And I hope you like this video. So comment below with any questions or anything. I'm happy to answer as many as I can. And regardless of the size of your channel or where you're at right now, it can happen for you. I promise. I didn't think it would happen for me, and it did. So yeah, keep going out there. I like to tell people, just press record. Just press record and go. All of this stuff can happen to you, all right? So let me know in the comments if you like it. Give it a thumbs up if you can. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. This is how to get brand deals in 2023. My name is Matty. I'll see you next time. Peace.